Hello, I'm Joyce Landry. Welcome to the Future of Cruising, Sustainable Ships, segment number 5. Today we're taking a departure from ocean sustainability just for a minute, and we're going to be talking about river sustainability. Joining us today is Pam Hoffee, who is leading the way at Avalon Waterways. And I have to say, I really relate to Pam's background. She yearned to travel when she was just a child, being the daughter of an Air Force dad. So she was out and about. Her very first job that she had was with the World Explorer Alaskan cruise ship, and she was there for an 8-year stint. She then decided to go back to her native Colorado, where she joined the Globus family of brands, which is a global tour operations company that you probably all know about. In 2005, Pam was named Vice President of Product and Operations for the Globus family of brands. And in 2018, she became Chief Operating Officer for the company and also Managing Director of Avalon Waterways. I would like to invite Pam onto our program. Hey, Pam.
Hi. Sorry, I got a little nervous. It took a second for the screen to come up.
That happens sometimes. So you're joining us today from hot, I guess, and a bit smoky Colorado. Yes?
Yes, unfortunately, we're experiencing forest fires in the western part of our state, but the smoke's coming into Denver, and we're even getting smoke from the California fires. So it's just adding to the fun of 2020 here in Denver, unfortunately.
Yes, 2020. I don't think we will ever forget this year, and probably will be happy to be over with it soon. We do appreciate so much you coming on to be on our program today, and we're all excited to learn more about the sustainability of the rivers, about Avalon, about really what you're working on, and I'm also curious about Globus family and how Globus family is associated with Avalon, how they started Avalon, how you then got involved. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Well, first, thank you so much for leading this series on sustainability. It's something I'm very passionate about, so I really appreciate you inviting us to be here and talk about rivers and sustainability. The Globus family of brands is a tour operator, and I heard your nice introduction about the company. It's a 92-year-old company, started in 1928, family-owned still by the same families in Switzerland. And I started with the company back in 2003 when I decided to return to Colorado, and I started with the touring side. So with the Globus, we have 3 brands: Globus, Cosmos, and Monograms. And it's a nice coincidence that I actually started the same week that they were launching Avalon Waterways. And Globus was selling into river cruising in Europe, and they were called Globus River Cruising. We were using other companies' ships, and our owners really just saw the potential to do something different and to do a different kind of river cruise. And so that's really how Avalon was born, with one ship in 2004 for the first sailing, and we now have 14 ships sailing in Europe, 2 of our own ships on the Mekong. We charter space on ships in the Galapagos, in India, on the Amazon, and in Egypt. So it's really expanded and grown quite a bit. And my role, I started managing the product and operations or product team, and then eventually was promoted to be vice president of product and operations. And when the man who'd been leading Avalon left, I was given the opportunity to take on the managing director of Avalon brand. I actually come from a cruise background, which I heard you mention. That's how I started in the industry. I started as in the shore excursion department in Alaska, and did that for quite a few years before I became director of operations for that cruise line. So it was a really nice transition and a chance for me to get back to my roots with a little bit of a twist on the rivers instead of ocean.
Well, how lucky for Globus, really, that they had you already internally with your cruise background to step into that role. That was just very fortuitous for everybody.
Well, and I feel like it was really lucky for me. It's a dream job, to tell you the truth.
That's great. And speaking of dream, there are, I'm sure, people that are watching today that have not been on a river cruise, may not be familiar or as familiar with rivers as they are with ocean cruising. So we're going to start the program with a short video, about a 2.5 minute video that will give people a taste, a flavor of what a river cruise is like, Avalon style. Let's take a look at that now.
The same company that reinvented river cruise ships with spacious rooms, huge windows, one-of-a-kind open-air balconies, and beds that face the ever-changing views outside, just reinvented the river cruise experience. Now you can choose 3 different ways to enjoy each destination, all as included excursions. You can choose to tour the classic sites and take in the stories. Or you can immerse yourself a bit deeper into local culture with an off-the-beaten-path discovery, a wine or beer tasting, or hear stories of local legend and lore. For the more adventurous souls, you can jump on a bike, paddle a canoe, or take a hike. Avalon has made it possible for you to cruise your way. We've also opened up a world of possibilities when it comes to dining, allowing you to choose where you'd like to dine, from an alfresco lunch in our open-air sky grill, to a more elegant dinner in our glass-walled dining room, or a petite plate in our panorama bistro. You can also choose when you'd like to dine. Our travel choices allow you to custom design your cruise, so you're always doing exactly what you want to be doing. Let us introduce you to the magic of the world, and you can experience it any way you'd like, with all the possibilities aboard Avalon Waterways.
So that shows right now that we have I think an open environment with a river cruise, that there is an opportunity for a lot of social distancing. It really, Pam, it lends itself very nicely for the world that we're in today. And I know you brought some excellent visuals with you to talk about sustainability specifically on the river. So why don't you take it away?
Absolutely, we can jump right in. So, sweet, safe, and sound cruising, I thought was a really apropos title for this session, just because we're going to touch a little bit about some of the changes that are being made on board, as well as talking about sustainability. So that little play with the word suite is intentional. Our panorama suites are something that we're famous for, and hopefully you caught that in the image there, and how much fresh air you can get in your staterooms, and how important that is right now. And with social distancing, our ships are, maximum 166 guests. That's our biggest ship in Europe. Our fleet is split between 128 and 166. And as you said so well, Joyce, they're really built for social distancing already. There's plenty of room on board. So we can jump to the next slide, which takes us a little bit more into the sustainability world. So our company, the Globus family of brands, we have focused quite a bit on sustainability. And if you go to any of our websites, so we'll talk about the Avalon Waterways website, you can go to a section called Avalon Cares, and there's an entire segment where you can dig deep into some of the things that we're doing in sustainability, but we will touch on that during this presentation and give you a lot of information. But there's so much more to the story. But this is our sustainability mission statement. And as a company, this is what we strive to do in sustainability. So to improve the lives and protect the places as we travel and discover the world together in a sustainable way, our family cares. So that's a nod to the Globus family of brands. And it is a family-owned company. And it's really important that we look at sustainability beyond the environment and protecting the places that we visit. So we look at it in multiple ways. So I do have some slides toward the end and some examples of some of the things that we're doing there. But we really felt we should start in talking a little bit about protocols and some of the changes that we're making in the COVID world, and also just a little bit more about the differences between ocean cruising and river cruising, because I believe that a lot of the audience is probably very familiar with ocean cruising and haven't necessarily been on a river cruise yet. So that video hopefully brought it to life to you and brought the experience, but I want to just take a couple minutes to talk about a few of the key differences. So size is obviously probably the one that comes to mind first. And I already told you about the largest ship in Europe. We actually have the ships on the Mekong that are only 36 guests. So we go even that small. So we're really talking size is one of the, differences. That's probably the easiest one. But what else? There's
By the
more
way,
to the story.
we're all in the industry, I believe, or in here in our office anyway. So we know very familiar where the Mekong is. But why don't you explain that just a little bit
Sure.
to those who don't?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Mekong is a river flowing between Vietnam and Cambodia. And we started sailing there probably about 10 years ago and have grown to having our 2 huge ships of 36 guests. But that's the right size for that experience, because you're going into these little small villages, and we don't want to overwhelm those villages with people when we come into these small villages. So having a 36 passenger ship is the right size for that experience. So that's why we chose to go with those 2 small vessels versus 1 for that itinerary. Thanks for asking for that clarification. I shouldn't assume. So in terms of other differences, what you do on a river cruise versus an ocean cruise is very different. I think for years, it was something that we always kind of had to defend, that ocean ships have they're built with the ship as the key destination. They're large scale entertainment facilities with activities that cater to hundreds and in most cases thousands of people. The parks that they have on board, the ice skating rinks, whatever it may be, but that's just not what river cruising is about. So when I say we had to defend it, we just had to explain that difference. River cruising is really more about the destination. So I'm not saying that the ship's not important, because obviously, and hopefully you saw from that video, our ships are gorgeous and they're certainly a beautiful retreat to come back to and enjoy, but the destination is really the experience. And so we include excursions, and a huge variety of excursions that you get to choose from when traveling with us, that really bring the destination to life with fantastic local guides. So that's another, key difference. And then, as the slide says, sea, not sea, is a big difference. So it's about the destination, and then we're not out at sea. So no seasickness, which is an important one for a lot of people, my mother being one of them. There's always a view. So you're always seeing, and you can see in this image here, passing castles, vineyards, ancient villages, and you most importantly have quick and easy access to ports of call. And in a COVID world, that really is important, because we have access to medical help if needed. That's actually one of the agreements, and part of operating is that you have to have agreement with the destinations you're going to travel in, that you would not be overwhelming their medical system by traveling, so that you know that you can, if someone were to get sick, they can go to the hospital. So there's never any risk that you're going to be out at sea, that you're not in it. You are always in inland waterways, and you would have access to medical care. So that's an important difference as well.
And Pam, that's really one of the elephants in the living room coming back to cruising post-COVID. Will I feel trapped? Will I feel like I get on a ship and I can't get off again? Because we've all seen the news pieces about that. And one of the things that I do really appreciate about being on the river is the come and the go. You come into small villages and sometimes even bigger cities, and you just walk off. You walk off the gangway, you go, and it's all very easy. And from what you're saying, there won't be any restrictions, even if there is any kind of an outbreak in the future, that will be taken care of.
Right. And that is part of the protocols that have been agreed upon. And so coming to this next slide, we have, while we're not operating yet, there are river cruises that are operating. So in terms of coming back to cruising, that is actually in practice already, these protocols. And that's exciting. We're not operating because we cater to a non-European clientele predominantly, but there are operators that cater to Europeans. And so since there isn't a border issue for those companies, there are many cruise lines operating already. So we work together as an industry through an organization called IG River Cruise, which is basically like the CLIA of river cruising. So, and we also work with CLIA, I should mention. So there is a CLIA River Cruise Committee. I just met with them this morning to get an update from some of these lines that are operating in Europe to hear how it's going. And these protocols that we submitted through IG River Cruise to the European Union in order to be able to go back and operate are in practice and are working. So that's really fantastic. So the rules are you have to at least follow those or do more. And some of the things we're doing are beyond the protocols that are required, but in general, these are seen as the right protocols to keep everyone safe and the standards that need to be in place. So when we talked, Joyce, we thought it might be worth just taking everybody through a few of these. Now, I'm talking very high level here. I'm not going to get into everything that's happening just because of time and the fact that we really want to focus on sustainability as well on this call. But I do want to say that there is a section on our website, which is avalonwaterways.com, by the way, that you can go to and find. It's called Avalon Assurance, and you can find our protocols there. There's actually a video where I talk about all of it. If you could stand more time with me, you could watch that. Or there's even a one sheet that you can get into more details, and down to an e-brochure that you can download. And we're using this as a live document, so it will get updated as any regulations change, as any recommendations change of things that we should adjust within our protocols. So the reality is that all river cruise ships, and especially Avalon, had really strict standards in place already to keep our guests safe, but they just weren't enough in this COVID world. So our global health and safety team worked with the groups that I already mentioned in order to develop these. So we can talk very high level, as I said, through each of these points, but I want to share the most important ones. Mm-hmm. So before you go, we'll be taking every step to make sure that you and your other travelers are healthy and ready for the journey. So we'll be sharing some pre-trip health and safety advice on things that you should bring, what you should plan, and we'll be sending you a questionnaire that you'll have to complete once you come on board. That are the questions that if you've been to the doctor, if you've flown yet, or when you're traveling to get to your river cruise, you'll also have to answer these questions. So they're pretty standard. They're asking you about the symptoms of COVID, if you've experienced them, who you've been around, and if you would need to pass our test in order to get on a plane as well. So we'll be sending that information just to make sure that you aren't leaving home and arriving to your destination and not able to board. So we'll be providing that in advance. We'll also be suggesting that you download our Avalon Go app, and that is full of a lot of information, but I'll explain, the real benefit of it later as we're talking through, what happens when you're on board. But those are important things pre-travel. Our welcome on board is changing a little bit. We have some new embarkation procedures to keep everyone safe. I think the most important thing is that pre-trip questionnaire that I mentioned. And in addition to that, our crew, who will be, in masks and gloves, will be sanitizing all of anything that comes on board, including your luggage. So your luggage has probably been out of your hands and through countless hands from the point that you've left your home. And so you can rest assured that it's been disinfected before it comes into your room for you to unpack.
Is this also, will they'll be having every passenger a temperature check coming on the ship too?
Yes, that's a great question, and it is going to be when you come on board the first time, and then throughout the cruise, we're going to be doing temperature checks. So we've actually purchased this kiosk system, so you won't have somebody coming up to you and taking your temperature. You just stand in front of it, and if by chance your temperature, so it does your core body temperature, so you don't have to worry that you've been outside and it's hot, and so your temperature's spiking. So it detects your core body temperature and will notify someone at the front desk if your temperature is high, and then they'll take you aside and retest it again and see if it continues that way. Then we'll look for some medical assistance, and as we said, very easy because we're so close to shore, we can always get medical help, and just then to test and see if we have any other symptoms and any issues to look beyond that. So thank you, that's a good question. So while traveling, some really important things that we think, make river cruising, so beyond the social distancing that we talked about, just a really great way to travel, and what's been proven as a great way to travel so far during this time. Avalon really goes the extra mile to ensure that the ship is a clean and safe way to travel. And we're, as a river cruise operator, we're taking a lot of those touch points out of travel. So we already talked about luggage. You don't have to be checking in and out of hotels and and dealing with your luggage. Your rooms are clean. You're dining in the same place every day that's being cleaned between every service. We include the excursions, so you don't have to worry about going and getting on a hop on and hop off tour, for example, or buying tickets and exchanging cash for those tickets and standing in lines, because we actually have expedited entry into the places that we visit. So a lot of those touch points of travel have been removed. We're also removing, speaking of touch points, for the short term and for however long needed, we are removing buffets and any self-service items from our ships, but they aren't going to go away. So all the things that people love about our ships, and the coffee station is the one that pops to my mind because that's what I love the most. We'll just have crew taking care of that instead of guests using it self-serve. And same thing with buffets. We'll either have, if it makes sense to still do a buffet, it'll be crew served, or it'll be turning into an a la carte menu instead. We've always had hand sanitizing stations. We'll be adding more and asking that they're just used more regularly. Removing printed materials. So that's a reason to have that Avalon Go app to just be able to keep yourself informed. And, I used to always take a photo of the daily newsletter. You don't need to do that anymore. It'll be in the app. So lots of changes there. In terms of the commitment to the cleanest ship, we've always had that. We've always had such strict cleaning protocols, and we're just taking that a little bit further. We are investing in electrostatic spray systems, and I can talk a little bit into our sustainability. I'll blend the two points here, because we also use eco-friendly cleaning supplies. That's really important to us. And the good thing is that those are rated to protect against COVID, other viruses, and bacteria. So the great thing about these electrostatic spray systems is that they allow our crew to more effectively clean, and actually to use even less of that product. So even though it's eco-friendly, it's even better that we're able to use less of it using these new electrostatic spray systems. And I think they're becoming something that we're going to see even more in this COVID travel world. We'll be disinfecting our dining rooms between meals, all of the shared items. So we have bikes on all of our ships, the helmets, the Nordic walking sticks, all these things that make the cruise so wonderful that people enjoy. We don't want those to not be available. So we just have to make sure that they're safe and that our guests know they've been disinfected between every use. So next, in terms of focusing on crew health, we always had a saying that a happy crew meant happy guests. And, the healthy crew part was a piece of that, but it was kind of a taken for granted. And now that's become even more important for us to focus on. We've always asked for medical certificates. That will now require a negative COVID test. They'll also be doing the daily temperature checks and checks on their health. So asking the same questions and making sure that they're monitoring their health and doing health screenings. So those are important things just to make sure, because a healthy crew equals helps to support, I should say, healthy guests as well, and a healthy ship. And then this last one is one that I actually thank our guests for bringing up this point, because it's something that is just how our ships were built. We're very lucky, but it's not something that I had necessarily thought about as a point to talk about. And it actually is a point for Avalon. It also, I want to say, is a point for most modern river cruise ships. So this is a great thing for our industry. And I do want to sell our industry as well as this point for Avalon when I talk about this, and that's fresh air. So Avalon does have an extra benefit for fresh air, and we can actually go to the next slide to talk about this, that not everyone has, and that's our panorama suite. And that window that's 11 feet wide and floor to ceiling, wall to wall, that opens 7 feet. And so fresh air, just being able to have access within your stateroom to fresh air, is really important. And so many people, when they see this photo, ask if it's photoshopped. It's not. It was taken in Budapest at the inauguration of this ship, the Avalon Envision, last year in Budapest, with Elizabeth Gilbert, the author of Eat, Pray, Love, as the godmother. So that's our panorama suite, and it's 200 square feet. It is not. We don't only have a couple of these on our ship. 80% of our staterooms are this stateroom. So 2 full decks of this stateroom. So pretty much almost all of our guests have access to this room. And I know, Joyce, you had experience in this.
Yes, it's my favorite feature, really, of your ship. I love this. I mean, when I took this cruise with my husband last year on the Rhone, and we were just, we'd sit up in bed and we would see the whole French countryside go by, and you could hear birds outside, and it was nice and quiet, and having our breakfast there. I mean, it truly is a very unique experience, and it adds a level of, I think, enjoyment for those who really love nature and fresh air as we do. So loved it.
Yeah, and the bed turned to face the view is something that is also, special to Avalon. And I will admit I sleep with those curtains drawn open because I don't want to miss that view for any minute, and I want to be able to see the passing scenery at all times. So we've actually won the best river cruise stateroom 4 years in a row from Cruise Critic, which is something we're proud of. So I kind of got off topic. I apologize for that, because I just love these rooms and want to talk about them. So fresh air was the point of the topic. So that's one element of fresh air. The second element is the more important part, and that is that the air systems within our ships are individual to each stateroom. So the air does not circulate between the stateroom next door. So you can rest assured that the air in the stateroom is just circulated again within your stateroom, so it's your own air, and with fresh outside air. So you never have to have this worry that the air from your neighbors is coming into your room, which is really important. And that is just something that's really wonderful about how river cruise ships, and specifically Avalon ships, I can't vouch for every ship out there, but I do know that it's something some of our other river cruise lines are talking about as well, are designed in terms of how they were built. So it's really an important distinction to help keep you safe now.
Very good.
All right. So we can move on to the next slide and move into talking a little bit more about sustainability. So we shared that sustainability mission statement, and I talked about our website and how you can find out a lot more about what we do, and that we do look at sustainability beyond the environment and beyond the environmental position of it. Of course, that's an important part, and there's actually a slide coming up that talks about that, but we'll pause on this one for a minute. I want to talk a little bit about some of the social and economic initiatives first when we're on this slide. So these two bleed together a little bit, and sometimes I'll have some challenges where I'm like, well, is that social or is it economic? Because sometimes they can fit into both. So social, it's really about the communities and improving the lives of the individuals who live in the communities where we visit. So a lot of this is about over-tourism and making sure that we are not contributing to over-tourism. And some of the things that we've done is we have developed some new ports along the rivers. We have a series called our Active and Discovery Cruises, and we actually have a section to talk about that, where we go to a lot of different ports, places like Visegrad in Hungary that most cruise lines don't go to, Engelhartsel in Austria, again, a place most people don't go to, but we have fabulous excursions there, and they end up being places that are among our guests' favorite stops, and we're the only ship there. And so, there are opportunities to help prevent over-tourism in ways like that. Another way is with a variety of excursions and helping communities to develop new excursions that get people off the beaten path and not necessarily doing what might just be the must-sees, or seeing them in a different way. So going by bicycle, for example, taking hikes, going to a painting or a cooking class, so things like that, and really working with the community to make sure that our visit is beneficial to them. We always hire local guides. That's really important. They provide a local connection, first of all. It's also providing employment to that community, and they provide and come up with a route that's beneficial to our guests, to where the route that they're taking through the community is good, and it's also not going to create havoc for the local people that are groups. And again, they're small ships, but still, you don't want to have any issues where our guests are creating any congestion in the city itself. So we're always thinking and very conscientious in that way in how we plan our visits, and we try to work with communities and make sure it's a win-win, that our visits are a win-win. In terms of economic, it even goes even further beyond the local guides. We also hire local coach companies, and this is something that not everyone does. And there's a sacrifice to Avalon in doing this, to tell you the truth. It's something, when I first started, I looked around and I saw some other companies had, beautiful signage on their coaches, and I was kind of jealous. Why don't we have Avalon signage on coaches? And it was explained to me that, we don't, because we choose to hire local coach companies instead, and to keep that money in the local community. And that's a great answer. And I was fine with that. And I'm fine with not having, beautiful Avalon signage and livery on a coach in order to have that economic benefit for the local community. It's just another reason for them to be thankful and, want Avalon to come there, because we're bringing something to the community. And we try to do that also buying local produce. Our chefs go off and buy local bread. And I can never even attempt to think I'm not going to eat carbs when I'm on board, because the local breads are so delicious. I have to have them, and luckily there are those bikes, and you can eat carbs and enjoy. So that's a good thing. We also for example, have a partnership with a orchard in Linz where we buy their juices. So all sorts of things like that to just benefit the local economy. And we're always looking for ways to bring new ports who want this economic development into our family and make it a win-win.
That's really admirable, and you can feel it when you're with you on these cruises. I've had that experience where local honey, local wines, even, and local produce, and it's such a joy to go to a place and have something that is from there, and it just makes you feel so much more connected.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned the wines, because I can't believe I didn't talk about it, because we actually only pour European wines on board. And as we're traveling, if we are going through a wine region, we will pour a wine from that region that night. And so we really do try to bring the culinary experience and the wine from a region to life as you're traveling with Avalon. So thank you for pointing that out, because it's really an important element that's different too.
A lot of people don't connect food with sustainability, but food sustainability does mean eating local, like the local boar, and it's just part of the same.
Absolutely. So we can shift to the next slide, which gets into some of our environmental initiatives. So this one really focuses on reduction of waste, but there are many things beyond this. So we'll talk first to what's on the slide, and then I'll talk a little bit more beyond that. So we're really proud to announce that in the last 2 years, we have been able to reduce our paper usage by 80% on board. So we've done that through the app that I mentioned. We've had great take up and usage from our guests with the app. We used to hand out maps and port information sheets and all of this paper to help guests experience their destination. But in reality, the app is just a much more efficient way to do that. And if a guest still wants a map, our front desk can provide it if there's someone who wants it. But it's really not necessary, because the app is just more content, better content, live content, and you don't have to use your data either. The maps use GPS. So you download it in advance using your home Wi-Fi or data, and it all is done without any data usage. So it's really cost effective also when you're traveling. We're even in 2020, we had planned to remove our daily, we haven't been operating, as I mentioned, but we plan to not produce a daily newsletter anymore, because that can be in the app. So all of the timings that you used to receive on paper, we can show on these screens that we've invested in around the ship, as well as the screens that already existed in the staterooms, of course, and then also with the app. So that avoids me having to take a photo every day of the newsletter, because I didn't want to carry it around with me. I can just have it in the app now. We've also gone to 100% single-use plastic free. So anybody who's traveled with us before and experienced all of the plastic water bottles that we had on board, that was something that I always had a big challenge with, and a lot of our guests had a challenge with, quite honestly. And so we have installed these Be Well water stations that not only do a choice of sparkling or still water, but actually vitamin infused waters. I try not to look at the notes because they sometimes distract me, but I saw somebody say how much they love our L'Occitane products. And so we still are going to have L'Occitane, but they're not going to be the little little small bottles that are used and discarded, or in my case, brought home with me because I love the products also. Instead, we have large refillable bottles, still with L'Occitane. So our guests will still get these products that they love, and just in a more sustainable way. So beyond those uses of plastic, anything else, stir sticks, coffee cup lids, whatever it may be, we've eliminated those on board. Now, we are still going through in a COVID world, will there be plastics that may have to come back into our world as we start operating? Things like gloves, potentially, plastic gloves in serving, things like that. And we're looking at options like cornstarch, making sure that obviously it still has to be something that protects against virus transmission, but we'd like it to still be as sustainable as possible. So we're really looking into all of those options and trying to maintain that single-use plastic free if we can.
So Pam, for those who have been with you before and did not experience that, I was on last May and you did not have the refillable water stations at that point. I love this idea. When did you start this?
So we piloted it on 2 ships last year, and on our Mekong ships, we did. So we tend to like to test things and make sure they work. I think most companies do before you install it everywhere. And it was really well received. We put it on the ships that do our active and discovery cruises as our first step, because those guests actually consume more water than the people on the classic style cruises, as we call the rest of our portfolio, because of the huge amount of active excursions that we offer. And so we wanted to make sure that they were able to take enough water for their excursions using these refill systems. So if it worked for those cruises, then it would work for the classic style cruises as well. And we got fantastic feedback. We actually chose not to provide water bottles to our guests, and instead suggest they bring their own. We certainly, our marketing team wanted Avalon water bottles in everyone's hands, and we all looked in our kitchen cabinets and saw that we all have, 10 water bottles. And if you produce a water bottle, it's actually worse for the environment if it's not used. I should know the statistic. I think it's 100 times it has to be reused before it's better for the environment than actually just using bottled water. And so we made the decision that was actually irresponsible. And so we are not providing a water bottle for everyone. We're suggesting people bring their own water bottle. If they don't, we'll have water bottles for them. But it is not our intention to create more waste by making this change.
And that's an impressive philosophy.
Well, thank you. So there are a couple of other things that I think are important on the environmental side that I just want to touch on briefly. So in 2020, we're also we're doing a trial on some of our ships with these nanoparticle filters that allow our engines to run longer with the same oil, so to reduce the use of oil and the changing of oil. We've also done a trial of a special coating on our ships that reduces the need to consistently and constantly paint. I think people are always kind of shocked and watching the crew on ships having to paint the sides of ships constantly to keep them looking so nice. This coating, if it works, will make the paint last for 10 years. And so what a huge win in terms of reduction of paint, which is obviously one of the more polluting things that we buy as a cruise line. So we're really hoping that works. We also have very fuel efficient engines. We use shore power whenever possible so that our generators aren't running. And that, is an economic win for the community because we're buying that shore power from them. And it also means that our engines aren't running when we're docked in port. We have LED lights, low flow toilets and taps. I mean, so many things. We try to reduce food waste. And we have, very, very sophisticated systems to monitor and measure the food use. So our goal, and I think anybody who's traveled with Avalon knows there's plenty of food and a huge variety, but it's always put out on our buffets when we had them in relatively small amounts because we don't want to be wasteful, and we only have a very small number of people on board. So there's huge variety, but in small amounts, and even our portions at meals are relatively small, which I actually appreciate. You can always ask for more if you want more, but at least we're not wasting huge amounts of food.
You're good point. The European portions, not American portions. Very good.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We have a couple of more. I want to make sure that we get everything in, and I'm being
Absolutely.
mindful of the time. So I just want to make sure that we get all of your great thoughts in here. So why don't we move to the next slide, which is really about your partnerships, which I think is very interesting, and touch upon a couple of those, and then we'll go to the end and be able to take questions after that.
All right. So, and we are just going to touch on two of these. So the one that has the big headline there is the ocean cleanup. And if you aren't familiar with the ocean cleanup, I certainly encourage you to look into this. It was an invention by a man who he's a Dutch entrepreneur, inventor, who came up with the idea when snorkeling in Greece, and he saw more plastic in the ocean than he saw fish, and he thought, this is a problem and I want to come up with a solution. So he's created this system of buoys that will clean the plastic out of the ocean. At the Great Pacific Garbage Patch will clean 50% of it within 5 years. And it went through lots of trials and errors in those trials, but it is now up and actually working. So I encourage you to go. There are lots of little videos that explain that. And probably the most exciting invention that they've just come up with is called the interceptor. And the reality is that the majority of the plastic that goes into the oceans comes from about 1,000 rivers that are predominantly in Asia, a few in Africa and South America. And if we are able to put these interceptors onto the mouths of these rivers, the plastic can be collected before it actually makes it into the ocean. So if you're cleaning up that Pacific Garbage Patch and also protecting and gathering the plastic before it goes into the ocean, we could have a reality of plastic-free oceans, and that's pretty exciting. So this is our biggest partnership. We decided to give our guests the option of doing electronic documents, and if they chose that, we would make a donation on their behalf to the ocean cleanup. So many of our guests chose electronic documents that we actually have just made the decision to just go exclusively to electronic documents, and we're still making that donation to ocean cleanup. So rather than just saving that and having a little extra money from the cost of those documents, we're donating it to ocean cleanup. And then the other one I want to touch on is called landmine design, and this is one that I just think is a very unique idea that someone in our company had, someone in our marketing team. We, of course, buy giveaways, as everyone does, for launches and for trade shows. We were doing things like pens and notebooks, calendars, whatever it may be. And she thought, what if we bought something that made a difference as well as was a nice gift? And so she found this organization called Landmine Design. It's a community in a landmine field, basically on the border of Cambodia and Thailand. And the women in this community are very much at risk for human trafficking because of the location. There isn't a lot of agriculture there because of the landmines, and because they're so close to Thailand, they would be told that they had a job doing something that was not, in fact, what they were sent to do. And so they were very much at risk. And this organization works with these ladies to teach them how to make these beads out of paper. And I actually wore the bracelets, and my necklace is a landmine design necklace as well. And they can make these beads and turn them into beautiful jewelry. And we were able to employ 12 women with our order the first year. We expanded that order with necklaces also, and ended up with employing 24 women the next year. And I was lucky enough to take a media trip on our Mekong cruise that we talked about earlier. And we met these ladies, and it gave them even more exposure. And so some other companies are now starting to think this way, and it's just helping them grow and helping to bring the women of this community out of poverty and out of risk for human trafficking. So that's one we're very proud of. We're very proud of all of these, and I think people are familiar with a lot more, but those are the two stories I wanted to share.
Thank you for that, Pam. And it does show that you carry your sustainability right through your whole company. Very good.
All right, so we touched briefly on Active and Discovery and how that was a solution to over-tourism through going to different ports, through the variety of excursions that we offer that get people off the beaten path and going and doing different things. So these cruises are just built differently from the ground up. And even if you've been on the Danube before, you probably haven't been to you've probably been to some of the ports. We obviously go to Vienna and we go to Budapest, but I mentioned some of the ports before. And so we try to go to off the beaten path places. And what's really different are the excursions you'll experience. I have done that cruise now twice. I could go a third time and still do different things. And so I certainly encourage people to look at these. They are bringing down the age, our average age in river cruising also. I think the average age, the reality is the average age of river cruising has been coming down anyway, because river cruising is certainly starting to appeal to a far wider range of people. There was always this mindset, especially among ocean cruisers, that river cruising was for older people, and it really can be a very active or very sedentary, if you want it to be, experience. It really is up to you. As you talked about, Joyce, we dock right in the middle of town. We have bikes on board. We include excursions, and we include hiking excursions, biking, canoeing, and these Active and Discovery include all of those choices. So if you want to do that, you can. If you don't want to do that, we still have the classic excursions on these. We have the Discovery excursions, which are things like the painting classes and cooking classes in these images. So they're really built for people who want to do things when they're traveling versus see things, and really for people who are looking for experiences.
Yeah, if I could quickly share, because this is what I did last year. We took an Active Discovery on the Rhone, and it was actually hard to make a choice between Active and Discovery because we wanted to do them all. So we had to mix it up every day. But the Active, I was very impressed, went from active, mildly active, to active, very active. So if you wanted to take that 20-kilometer bike ride in the Camargue, you could do that. If you didn't want to, you could do it less, or you could do shorter, or you could take an electric bike ride. You know, it was really to the level of someone's fitness ability. And we mixed it up, did a lot of things, but I've been cruising for many, many years. And this, I found a very exciting way to travel, is to have your choice and your pick of how you wanted to have your experience. It was very nice.
Thank you. These are, for me, this is the way I love to travel. So these are my favorite cruises. They're certainly not what we have the majority of in terms of our portfolio, but we are really moving a lot in this direction because we're finding so many people do love to travel this way. And so it's great to hear your personal experience as well. And we do have, I know, a short video that talks about Active and Discovery that can bring it to life.
Well, funny you mentioned that, because I was just going to introduce.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's perfect. This is a 2-minute video, and it is, I'm going to leave it alone and let you just experience it yourself. Can we show the video, please?
Why do we travel? Is it to see new things? Or to try new things? Is it to go back centuries? Or to be in the moment? Is it to take pictures? Or to take action? We travel to see the works of sculptors and painters and to imitate their techniques. We travel to meet bakers and chefs and to saute in their kitchens. We travel to meet farmers, vintners, and brewers and to taste their divine secrets. We go out into the world to forge new paths and to discover old ones. We follow sweet aromas, alluring fragrances, and complex bouquets. We pedal and paddle, jog and climb, dabble and dance, and even march to the beat of our own drum. We journey to examine and explore, to listen and learn, and to engage and enjoy, with hands on and hands off. We travel to walk in the footsteps of all who have come before us, warriors and soldiers, emperors and kings, sailors and sirens, architects and builders, none of whom, by the way, were ever bystanders. So when we travel, why should we be? Engage, interact, indulge, only on Active Discovery Cruises, exclusively from Avalon Waterways.
Okay, so if that doesn't make you want to travel, nothing will. That always brings a little tear to my eye, because this is what we've been waiting for. is to get back out there again. So so again, thank you, Pam, for providing that lovely little flavor for us. We have some questions right now that have come up from those of you who are watching, and I welcome anyone else to add a question. Do not add it in the area with chatting. You have to add it in the actually ask a question box at the bottom. And thank you also for voting on a couple of those questions, so they came to the top. So this one really, Pam, can you clarify again if Avalon owns and operates, you own and operate 2 ships in the Mekong, but do you own all of your ships, or do you charter ships in some of those areas? Are they actually all Avalons?
So we actually don't own the ships on the Mekong. I do want to clarify that. They are full-time charters that we were able to design and build to our specification, but we can't actually own the ships there. So we have a long-term partner who operates them to our standards, and we were able to build them to our standards. So they are built with the panorama suites as the design, with the bed facing the view. The panorama suites are slightly bigger because we don't have the limitations of the size of the locks in Europe that we have to get through, but those ships are built for us. And within Europe, it's actually the same story. We do own some of our ships, and then some of them are long-term leases that are built to our specifications and long-term charters to us. So it's a mix of an arrangement between the vessels, but they are all exclusive to Avalon and built for us and operated with our standards.
Great. This question actually I want to add a little bit to, because it says to refresh our memories, are you sailing now, or when will you start sailing? But I also wanted to add to that, you have a particular demographic that comes on your vessels. And if you could tell us who that is, because that's going to probably give us a clue as to when you'll start sailing again.
Sure. So no, we are not sailing currently. We sell in all of the English-speaking markets. So we sell in the U.S., Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the U.K., a bit in India even. So those are where we have our selling offices that are, and it was in that order pretty much in terms of the volume. So for us, until the borders open to where our guests can travel, we are not operating. And we're hopeful that that happens to where our guests will be able to travel soon. But until then, that's really what's holding us back. We have all of our protocols ready. We feel ready. It's just waiting for that moment in terms of when we'll be operating. So that talks about where people are from in terms of the demographic. In terms of beyond that in demographic, if I had to pinpoint an age, it is typically a baby boomer in terms of the age range, and it goes from younger baby boomers on the active and discovery, and even some Gen X, and certainly wider range. That's the average age, I should say, and then to the mid-range and even some of the older baby boomer and beyond on our classic style cruises. But the age is, river cruising, as we talked about, really can be a wide appeal to a wide range of guests. Mm-hmm. Just as ocean cruising does now. When I started in ocean in the 90s, it was all about older people as well, and that has totally changed.
And I think will change even more that you offer the active discovery, because that will attract a lot of younger people. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Now, another question here. What is the biggest challenge that river ships confront in the area of sustainability?
Well, I talked about how a lot of our ships in particular have been built to be quite sustainable in terms of the fuel efficient engines, the LED lights, I didn't actually talk about the sewage systems and how we don't actually discharge water into the rivers, but if we did, it would be cleaner than the water we took on board, because we're cleaning water to that level. So a lot of those elements on the environment, I think, are really being handled quite well by ourselves and a lot of the river cruise lines. So what I see as the biggest challenge is the potential for over-tourism. So our industry has grown dramatically in the last 10 years with a lot of new ships coming into play. I don't think we're at a level of over-tourism yet, but there's potential for that. If growth were to continue at that same pace for quite a while, we could be there. And so that's something that we were preempting by working with communities, trying to find new destinations, because certainly the places that are well known and that people kind of know about for cruising are fabulous, but there are so many other they're mostly little villages, and they've become known because we've made them become known. But there are fabulous villages along these rivers that have not become known and have a lot to show and showcase as well. And so, working with communities that want to develop a tourism industry is a way to make sure that we don't get ourselves in that position.
That's great. I didn't mention this to you, but I actually started my career in the river industry too, but on the Mississippi with the Delta Queen Steamboat
Company.
Company.
Didn't know that.
And I remember just the beauty and the slowness and being able to just pretty much stop anywhere, put the gangway down and go. And you do have, while you're a little bit more organized than that, you do know where you're going. Some of the little villages that we stopped in France were enchanting, and the only thing there was a medieval village, and it was either walk into it or take the bike and just really enjoy yourself for the afternoon and explore. It's about exploration. That's what you can do with the smaller ones.
Absolutely. And, river cruising takes you to places that you probably haven't heard about that town before. And it's somewhere that you'll always remember the experience that you had there and be thankful that you went. But it's not, somewhere that you necessarily have heard about always before. And that's one of the things I really love about river cruising is you get really to the heart of a huge variety of destinations. We also are lucky enough to be right in the center of Paris when we're docked. So, it goes from well-known places to off the beaten path for sure.
Well, we've got only a couple more. One I think here is quick, which is there Wi-Fi on board? And if so, is it included?
There is Wi-Fi, and it is included. It is based off of the cell towers, so I can't say that it works 100% of the time, just like your cell phone doesn't always work. But when there's cell service, it works. And we actually invested in something new in 2020 that gives everyone their own hotspot, basically, our new listening devices that you use on excursions, which we didn't really talk about, which allow for social distancing on excursions. We've partnered with a company called Whispers to do a new version of those that is actually a Wi-Fi hotspot. So everyone will have their own, and we haven't been able to see it in action yet because we aren't operating in 2021, but this will be a game changer just in terms of improving Wi-Fi service even on board. So it is included, and we do offer it, and we think that this new service is going to be even better.
That's great. And you're also in port most of the time, so
right.
One can have their mobile phone, and you're a lot more able to get connection. Using it on board is certainly very good as well, but I think there's some opportunities there for flexibility. I'm seeing more hospitality companies installing UV lighting sanitation systems to kill germs in the air. Is that something Avalon is looking at, or is that something that you mentioned earlier on this program, that you have another system that probably would be in conflict with that?
So UV systems for our air filtration, we don't intend to do, because we have the air systems that are single and don't recirculate air. So we are looking at UV systems for sanitizing items that can't be sanitized otherwise. So some electronics that can't be sanitized with a liquid sanitizer, things along those lines we are looking at. And those electrostatic spray systems that I mentioned allow us to sanitize things that maybe in the past we didn't think about sanitizing. So curtains, between cruises, curtains, the couch that you saw in that image, the chair, all of those things, the soft goods that didn't need sanitizing before, they were cleaned on a regular basis, but you didn't necessarily have to sanitize them between every cruise, are now going to be sanitized between every cruise. And then UV can do electronics, things along those lines.
Yeah, I think why there's so much attention on the air quality is because of our early reports on the large ships that the COVID was spread through the air conditioning ducts. But that doesn't happen on ships that do not recycle air. So I'll make that really, really clear. So on ships, vessels that don't have recycled air, that is not a concern. Where it's recycled, that's where there's some work that still has to be done. And typically that's on the larger cruise ships.
Right.
Last question. Here we go. When will you have your 2022 schedules out?
Very soon. I don't recall the exact date, and we usually don't leak it either, but I can say that it's very soon that 2022 will be open. We are open a bit for 2022 already. Anything that includes Oberammergau, so the Passion Play in Oberammergau that was rescheduled from 2020 to 2022 is open. So we are partially open, and we'll be opening further soon. But if somebody's looking for a charter, that we do have available already, and have the information on all of those dates. So and we sell early even before we're open. So if anybody's really looking, our team can certainly help and give that information.
Right. So keep an eye on Avalon's website. That would be the place to go to see what's happening and get an idea of when it's coming out. Pam, this has been really informative. It's been really great getting into the whole river conversation with you and sustainability. Really appreciate you taking the time today. Thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you so much, Joyce, again for inviting me, and thanks to everyone who joined us. It was really a pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you. For our next program, our next segment, I wanted to let you all know it's September 16th, and we are going to the Galapagos. We're going to the Galapagos with Celebrity Cruise Line. Susanna Romano and Dr. Ellen Prager will be joining us for that program to tell us all about the sustainability of the vessel itself, but also the environmental importance of that area of the world and how it's being preserved. And I think that you will all be very interested to hear, those who have not been in the Galapagos. It is a once-in-a-lifetime destination. So thank you all for being with us again today. Thank you for your support. Thank you for liking us on social media. Thank you for going to our Sustainable Ships website. And we look forward to seeing you again on segment 6, which will be on September 16th. And until then, live sustainably.